The captive alien in the cold, dark city. The sound of distant engines echoed through narrow alleyways. Snowflakes gently fell from the sky, coating everything in a soft layer of white. In one of these alleys, a strange sight was unfolding. Woman, tall and pale, knelt on the ground, her hands shackled to the cold, rusty pipes around her. Her skin glowed faintly, an eerie shade of silver, and her long platinum blonde hair hung in tangled strands around her face. Her eyes, large and haunting, watched the man standing before her. She had seen countless people, but none like him. He was different. His eyes were kind, not cold and calculating like the others she had encountered. She had been captured, imprisoned, and treated as nothing more than a tool for their use. She was an alien, a creature from another world, and for too long she had been used for her powers, her strength, and her knowledge. But this man, he wasn't like the rest. "You're my master now," she said, her voice quiet but steady, filled with both defiance and resignation. The chains rattled as she shifted, her body tired but still strong. Her words weren't a plea. She knew better than to beg. They had used her kind for years, and she had learned to fight, to survive, to endure. But there was something about this man that made her hesitate. She didn't feel the usual fear, the usual anger that boiled inside her. This time it was different. The man, dressed in a long dark coat, crouched down to her level. His face was soft, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "No," he replied, his voice gentle but firm. "You're not my servant. I didn't come here to control you. I came here to free you." She stared at him, her eyes narrowing in confusion. Free, she had never known freedom, not like the humans did. To her, freedom was just an illusion, something whispered about in the darkest corners of her mind. The others, her captors, her enemies, had never given her that chance. She had been a prisoner of war, a prisoner of science, a prisoner of her own abilities. And now, this man was telling her she could be free. It was almost too much to believe. "You want to free me?" she asked, her voice trembling for the first time. "Why?" The man reached out, carefully avoiding the chains that bound her. His hand hovered near her face, as if unsure whether she would allow the gesture. His gaze softened. "Because you deserve it," he said simply. "No one should live in chains. No one should be used like an object. You're a person, not a weapon. And you don't have to be afraid anymore." For a moment there was silence. The alien woman blinked, her mind racing. She had heard similar words before, but they had never meant anything. Promises, lies, all designed to make her believe she was something more than just a tool. But the way this man spoke, the warmth in his voice, it was different. She could feel it, but still, she couldn't let herself hope. It was too dangerous. Hope only led to disappointment. "I don't know what you want," she said, her voice cold once more. "I don't know if I can trust you." He nodded, understanding. "I know you're scared," he said, "but I'm not like the others. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to choose your own path. You don't owe me anything. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. I'm just here to give you a choice." Her eyes flickered with a mix of emotions, fear, doubt, but also a flicker of curiosity. She had spent her whole life being controlled, being told what to do, what to think, how to feel. She had never had a choice. To hear this man speak as if she had control over her own life, it was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. "Why would you help me?" she asked, still unsure of his true intentions. What do you get out of this? He smiled faintly. I don't need anything. I just want to help. I believe in people, even those who have been broken, like you. He stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. I know it's hard to believe, but I'm offering you a chance to make your own decisions, a chance to be free. She was silent for a long moment, the chains heavy on her arms, her mind spinning. The snow outside the alley swirled in the cold wind, but inside, the warmth of his words seemed to wrap around her like a blanket. Could it be true? Could she really be free? For the first time in what felt like forever, the alien woman allowed herself to hope. It wasn't much, just a tiny spark, but it was there. Maybe, just maybe, this man wasn't like the others. Maybe he really was offering her something she had never known a chance to choose for herself. To be free, her voice was soft as she spoke again. What do I do now? He extended his hand, a simple gesture, but it felt like everything. You choose. You can stay here, or you can come with me. But I promise, I won't force you. The decision is yours. The alien woman looked at his hand, then back at his face. She had spent so long thinking she was nothing more than a weapon, a tool, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be human too. Have a choice. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The chains rattled again, but this time they didn't feel as heavy. Okay, she said, her voice steady. I'll trust you. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt free. The aliens struggled, the snow continued to fall, dusting the alley with a quiet, serene layer of white. But inside, the alien woman felt anything but peaceful. She was free, yes, but her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Freedom was a foreign concept to her, a dream whispered in the dark corners of her thoughts, but never truly believed. Now, standing in front of the man who had offered it, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was too good to be true, wasn't it? She looked around at the empty alley, the cold walls towering above them. The world outside seemed unchanged, still as harsh and unforgiving as it had always been. How could a single act of kindness make everything different? She had been used, betrayed, and abandoned by so many before. How could she trust this stranger, who seemed so genuine, yet so mysterious? The man, he had given her freedom, yes, but there were still too many unanswered questions. Who was he really? What did he want from her? Was there a price to this kindness that she was too afraid to see? The chains that once bound her wrists were now gone, but the invisible chains of doubt wrapped around her heart, tighter than any metal. Are you okay? The man's voice broke through her thoughts, soft and uncertain. He stood a few feet away, watching her carefully. His concern was genuine, she could see that, but that didn't make it any easier to trust him. She turned to face him, her eyes narrowed, still full of skepticism. I don't know, she replied honestly. You freed me, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what to do with myself. Now, her voice cracked slightly, and she quickly looked away. Feeling vulnerable, the man took a step closer but stopped, respecting her space. I understand. It's a lot to process, but I'm here for you if you need someone to talk to. Her eyes flickered to him, then back to the snow-covered ground. His words were kind, but they didn't erase the weight of her past. She had lived a life of constant survival, of using her powers to fight, to escape, to endure. She had been trained, shaped into a weapon, and now, here she was, standing in an unfamiliar world, unsure of how to exist without chains, without orders. She didn't know who she was anymore. You say you want to help, she began, her voice low. But how do I live a life I've never known? How do I just be free? Her eyes locked with his, a mix of anger and confusion. I've never had the luxury of choices. Everything has always been decided for me. How can you expect me to just trust you? The man sighed, a deep, heartfelt sound, and took a step back, giving her the space she clearly needed. I don't expect anything from you. I only want to show you that freedom is possible. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Don't have to figure everything out all at once. Take it one step at a time. She stared at him for a long moment. He wasn't making promises or offering quick fixes. He wasn't trying to force her into anything. That, more than anything, made her feel like there was a sliver of truth in his words. But still, the fear lingered. How could someone who had known nothing but control, nothing but power used against her, suddenly become free? What's the point of freedom if I don't know who I am? She asked, almost to herself. She wasn't sure if she wanted an answer. She wasn't sure if she could handle one. Freedom means finding out who you are, not just what others made you to be, the man said gently. It means being able to make your own choices, no matter how small. It's about living without the weight of someone else's control over you. She shook her head, frustration boiling inside her. But what if I don't know how to live like that? What if I'm just broken? The man's expression softened. You're not broken. You're human. You've just been through things that most people can't even imagine. But that doesn't mean you're lost. You've just been held back for too long. He took another step toward her, but this time she didn't back away. I can't fix everything, but I can offer you the chance to figure it out for yourself, at your own pace. She stayed silent, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to believe him. The warmth in his voice, the sincerity in his eyes, it felt like something real. Something she hadn't experienced in a long time, but she was afraid of trusting him, afraid of what might happen if she did. I don't even know where to start, she whispered, looking at the ground. I don't know who I am. The man didn't say anything at first. He simply nodded, as if he understood. It's okay to not have all the answers right now, he said quietly. You don't need to know everything at once. Just take it one day at a time. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the snow falling gently around them. The world seemed still, as if waiting for her to make her choice. The alien woman took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her past pressing down on her. But something inside her shifted. The chains were gone, and even if her mind still felt imprisoned by doubt and fear, she could at least take one small step towards something better. I'll try, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll try to be free. The man smiled, his eyes softening with hope. That's all I'm asking. And with that, the alien woman took the first step toward a life she had never imagined, into the unknown, her heart still heavy but her spirit lighter than it had been in years. The price of freedom. The days passed in a blur of new experiences and unsettling realizations. The alien woman, still unsure of everything, found herself constantly questioning the choices she was making. Freedom felt like an illusion at times, like a distant dream that was just out of reach. She wasn't used to being in control of her own life. The man who had freed her, who had offered her this strange gift, seemed patient with her confusion, but she could sense a deep sadness in his eyes, as if he knew just how difficult this journey would be for her. Each morning, she woke up to a new world, one where no one told her what to do, where her actions were her own. At first, it felt like a weight lifted off her chest, but soon, that same freedom became suffocating. She didn't know how to live without orders, without a purpose that was handed to her by someone else. Her mind, trained to be sharp and focused, had no target now. She wandered through the days, lost in the vastness of her own thoughts. The man, though kind, didn't know the real battle she was fighting. He saw only the surface, the alien who had been imprisoned for so long. But what he didn't see was the fear that gripped her heart. What he didn't know was that every choice, every small act of independence, felt like a challenger battle between who she had been and who she could become. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the city, she sat on the edge of a rooftop, watching the world below. The snow had stopped falling, but the cold still bit at her skin. She pulled her knees up to her chest, trying to hold on to some semblance of warmth. The man joined her, his footsteps light against the frost-covered ground. "You've been quiet today," he said, his voice soft. "How are you feeling?" She glanced at him, unsure of how to answer. How could she explain the storm inside her? How could she explain that every part of her wanted to trust him, but every part of her was afraid to let go of the only thing she knew? "I don't know," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to be free. I don't know what to do with myself." He sat beside her, his eyes searching hers. "You don't have to figure everything out all at once. Freedom isn't something that happens overnight. It's a journey, and you're on it now." She shook her head, the frustration bubbling up inside her. "But how do I know if I'm making the right choices? I'm used to being told what to do. I'm used to being someone's weapon, someone's tool. Now, I don't know who I am. I don't know what's right anymore." The man was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. "I can't tell you what's right for you," he said finally. "Only you can figure that out. But I can tell you this. You're not a weapon. You're a person, and you deserve to live like one." Her heart tightened at his words. How could he see her that way? She had never been treated as a person, only as a thing to be used, a tool for someone else's agenda. She had been molded into something she couldn't even recognize anymore. How could she shed that past, that identity, when it had been all she knew for so long? "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling with the weight of her question. "Why did you free me? What do you want from me?" The man looked at her, his expression softening with understanding. "I didn't help you because I wanted anything from you. I helped you because I believe everyone deserves a chance at something better. I believe you deserve that chance." Her gaze dropped to the ground, the snow crunching softly beneath her. "But what if I can't change? What if I'm too broken to be free?" He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not broken. You've been through a lot, yes. But you're not beyond repair. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not have all the answers. But you don't have to carry that weight alone. I'm here to help you, not to control you." His words were like a balm to her wounded soul, soothing the pain that had festered inside for so long. But even as she felt comforted by his kindness, the doubt still lingered. Was she really capable of freedom? Or was she doomed to be a prisoner of her past forever? She stood up abruptly, her thoughts spinning. "I need some time alone," she said, her voice tight. "I need to figure things out." The man didn't argue. He simply nodded, standing up with her. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As she walked away from him, her heart felt heavy, but at the same time, there was something else. something small, fragile, but growing hope. For the first time in years, she felt like she had a choice. And even though the path ahead was uncertain, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. The alien woman stopped at the edge of the rooftop, gazing out at the city below. It was a city of lights, of life, and of endless possibilities. And for the first time, she saw it not as a prison, but as a place where she could begin to write her own story. Her story, a story of freedom, of choice, of change, and maybe, just maybe, it was a story worth living. A glimpse of her past the city stretched out before her, a sea of lights against the dark sky. The air was crisp and cold, but it didn't bother her as much as it had in the past. She was free now at least. That's what she kept telling herself. But freedom was a strange thing. It wasn't something you could simply accept and move on from. It was something you had to learn to live with, and that was harder than she had imagined. As the alien woman stood on the rooftop, lost in her thoughts, the memories of her past began to creep into her mind. It wasn't something she could control. Not anymore. The past had a way of clawing its way back to the surface. No matter how hard she tried to bury it, she remembered the cold, sterile rooms where they had kept her, the hum of machines that seemed to never stop. She had been tested, poked, prodded. They had used her, experimented on her, all in the name of power. She had been an asset, a weapon in their eyes, nothing more than a tool to further their agenda. The pain, the loss, the feeling of being trapped had all started there. And no matter how far she ran, it seemed to follow her. Her hands clenched into fists as she remembered the faces of the people who had used her. They didn't care about her past, her pain. They saw only her strength, her abilities, her value. As a weapon, it was hard to believe that someone could truly see her as a person, as a living being who deserved compassion. She had spent so long thinking of herself as nothing more than a weapon, a tool, that she couldn't even imagine a life beyond that. "Are you all right?" The voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to see the man standing behind her. His expression was soft, concerned. He had been there for her through so much, offering her a chance at freedom, at a life she had never known. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was living a lie. The past was too deeply ingrained in her, too present to be forgotten. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The past keeps coming back. I can't escape it." The man walked closer, stopping beside her. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, waiting for her to say more. He understood. He had always understood. "It's okay," he said finally, his voice quiet and reassuring. "You don't have to forget it. You just need to learn how to live with it. It's a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you." She glanced at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and pain. "But it does define me," she replied, shaking her head. "How can I be free when everything I've known is tied to that past? It's always going to be a part of me, no matter how hard I try to move on." The man's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder, a small but significant gesture. "Your past doesn't have to control you," he said gently. "It can shape who you are, but it doesn't have to dictate your future. You have the power to choose. It's not about forgetting what happened. It's about deciding how to move forward." She closed her eyes, his words washing over her like a wave. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that she could move beyond her past. But how could she? The scars were too deep, the memories too vivid. Every time she thought she had left it behind, something would trigger a memory, and she would be right back in that dark, cold room, with the sound of the machines and the cold eyes of those who had used her. "I don't know if I can," she said, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can ever escape it." The man remained silent for a moment, as if considering her words. Then he said something that caught her off guard. "You don't have to escape it," he said softly. "You just need to accept that it happened, and then you need to make a choice. A choice to live, to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult it may seem." She turned to face him, her heart racing. His words felt like a lifeline, something real to hold on to in the sea of confusion and doubt. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to live again. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice shaky. "I'm scared that I'll never be able to let go of the past, that I'll always be trapped in it." The man smiled gently, his eyes full of understanding. "You're not alone in this. You don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to do it all at once. Take it one step at a time. You don't need to have all the answers today. Just take one step forward and then another." For the first time in a long while, the alien woman felt something she hadn't thought possible. Peace. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The weight of her past wasn't going to disappear overnight, but maybe, just maybe, she could start learning how to carry it without letting it crush her. The snow began to fall again, soft flakes drifting through the air. She stood there for a long while, taking in the quiet of the moment, the silence of the world around her. It was strange to feel this calm, this sense of possibility. She had always been defined by her pain, by the things that had been done to her. But now, she was beginning to see that maybe she could be defined by something else. Hope, and that was enough to make her believe that. For the first time in her life, she might truly be free. Bonds of trust, the days blurred together in a way that was both comforting and unsettling. The alien woman found herself adjusting to a new rhythm of life, a life where she was no longer controlled by the cold, sterile environment of her past. She spent her time in the city, walking through the streets, observing the people, and trying to make sense of this strange new world. There were still moments of doubt, moments when she would freeze, haunted by memories of the past, but the man who had saved her was always there. He was patient, understanding, and he never pushed her to be anything she wasn't ready to be. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She wasn't sure if it was the sense of purpose she had once had, or if it was the lingering fear that her past would catch up with her. But despite everything, she had started to trust him. He had kept his promises, never asking for anything in return, never demanding anything from her except her trust, and that, she realized, was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. One morning, as the sun rose over the city, casting a warm golden glow over the streets, the man approached her with a serious expression on his face. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. The alien woman's heart skipped a beat. She knew that tone. It was the kind of tone he used when something important was about to happen. She had learned to read his expressions, his body language, and right now he looked concerned. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tight. "I need your help," he said. "Something's come up, and I can't do this alone. But I don't want to put you in danger. You've been through enough already." She looked at him, unsure of what he was asking. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, trying to ignore the flutter of unease in her chest. The man hesitated, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone who knows about you, about what you are. Someone dangerous. They're after you, and they've been tracking us for days. I don't know why, but I do know that we need to stop them before they find us." The alien woman felt a cold chill run down her spine. The past had followed her into this new life, and now it seemed to be catching up with her faster than she could outrun it. "You want me to help you fight?" she asked, her voice betraying her unease. He nodded, his expression softening. "I don't want you to fight. I just need you to stay with me. I need you to trust me, just like I've trusted you. We're in this together." For a long moment, she didn't speak. She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of manipulation or deceit. But there was none. There was only trust. And for the first time, she realized something profound. This man wasn't asking her to fight for him or with him. He was asking her to trust him, to stand by his side, not as a weapon, but as a partner. That realization hit her like a wave, washing over her fears and doubts, leaving only a sense of clarity. "I trust you," she said, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. The man smiled, a rare expression that warmed his features. "Thank you," he said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you." And in that moment, the alien woman felt something. Inside her stir something she had thought lost forever. It was hope. It was the beginning of something new, something that wasn't defined by the pain of her past. She wasn't a weapon anymore. She wasn't just a prisoner of her circumstances. She was someone who had a choice, who could decide what kind of person she wanted to be. The two of them moved through the city, the man leading the way with quiet determination. The alien woman followed, her steps more confident than before. She still had doubts, still had fears, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer alone. The bond of trust between them was something that could not be broken, no matter what dangers lay ahead. As they approached the edge of the city, the man paused, looking around cautiously. "We need to be careful," he murmured. "They're close." The alien woman nodded, her senses sharpened. The memories of her past, the fear, the anger, they still lurked beneath the surface, ready to rise at a moment's notice. But she wasn't the same person who had been locked in those cold rooms, who had been used as a weapon. She was someone different now, someone who could choose her path. And right now, that path led her beside the man who had shown her kindness, who had given her freedom when no one else would. Together, they moved deeper into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time in her life, the alien woman felt that she wasn't just surviving, she was living. The bond between them had grown stronger, and whatever challenges they would face, she knew they would face them together. The ultimate choice, the tension in the air was thick as the man and the alien woman made their way through the narrow alleys, their footsteps muffled by the quiet of the city. It had been days since they had first discovered that they were being tracked, and every moment since had felt like a countdown. Every corner, every shadow seemed to hold the potential for danger. The woman could feel it now, the weight of the choice she had to make, the burden that was pressing on her chest. The man had told her more than once that she had a choice, that she wasn't bound by anything anymore. But the truth was, the past still held a tight grip on her heart. The freedom she had been given was not a gift she could accept easily. She didn't know how to be free. She didn't know how to live in a world where she wasn't hunted, where she wasn't a weapon, a tool to be used. She had been trained to survive, to fight, to obey. Now she had to unlearn everything she had ever known. They reached a small, run-down building at the edge of the city, its windows dark and empty. The man stopped at the door, his hand on the handle. He turned to look at her, his eyes steady and full of concern. "I need you to decide," he said quietly. "We can leave the city. We can go far away, find somewhere safe. We'll start over. But there's a chance that they'll keep coming after us. They won't stop. They want you, and they won't rest until they have you." The alien woman's heart raced. The choice before her was both simple and impossible. She could run, she could hide, and she could build a life somewhere far away, where no one knew her past. It was tempting, but it was also a lie. She would always be looking over her shoulder. She would always be running, hiding from the shadows of her past, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could do that. "Or," the man continued, "we can face them, we can fight, we can take control of our lives. It won't be easy. It might not even be possible, but it's your choice." She closed her eyes, the weight of his words pressing down on her like a storm. The fear, the uncertainty was overwhelming, but at the same time, something inside her stirred. This was her life. She wasn't a weapon anymore. She wasn't a prisoner. She had the power to choose. But what was the right choice? Running would be easy, but it would also mean giving up on everything she had started to build, giving up on the chance for a life that was truly hers. Standing and fighting, on the other hand, meant confronting everything she had been running from. It meant confronting her past, the people who had used her, the pain, the fear. It meant putting everything on the line, risking everything she had gained for a chance at something more. She looked at the man, his face calm, but his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. He wasn't asking her to make the choice for him. He was asking her to choose for herself, to decide what kind of person she wanted to be. And that, more than anything, was the scariest thing of all. "I don't know if I'm ready to fight," she said, her voice shaky. "I've never fought for myself before. I've always fought for others. I've always been a tool for someone else's cause. I don't know if I have it in me." The man stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "You don't have to do it alone," he said gently. "We're in this together. You don't have to fight just because you think you're supposed to. You fight because you deserve the chance to live on your own terms, and no one can take that from you." She felt the weight of his words settle into her heart. The thought of facing her past, of fighting against the people who had used her, terrified her. But the thought of running, of hiding forever, was even worse. She had spent too long being controlled, too long being told who she was and what she was worth. She was no longer that person. She was more than the weapon they had made her. "I'll fight," she said, her voice steady now, filled with a quiet determination. "I'll fight for my freedom. I'll fight for the chance to live, not as their tool, but as myself." The man smiled, a look of pride and relief crossing his face. "Then we fight together." They stood there for a moment, the weight of their decision hanging in the air. The alien woman felt a sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't a perfect decision, and it didn't promise an easy path ahead. But it was her decision, and that was enough. The man reached for her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Let's do this." With a final glance at the darkened streets behind them, the alien woman nodded. She had made her choice. She was no longer running from her past. She was no longer a prisoner of her fears. She was ready to fight for the life she had always dreamed of, the life she had never thought was possible. Together, they stepped into the building, ready to face whatever awaited them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, the alien woman felt ready to face it, no matter what it brought. A new beginning. The air in the building was stale. heavy with the scent of dust and decay. The flickering light from a single bulb cast long shadows on the cracked walls, and the sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty space. The alien woman felt the weight of the decision she had made pressing down on her. There was no turning back now. She had chosen to stand, to fight not for anyone else, but for herself. And even though the fear still lingered in the back of her mind, there was a spark inside her now, something new and powerful that refused to be ignored. The man beside her walked with quiet confidence, but she could feel the tension in his posture, the silent understanding that they were about to face something bigger than either of them had imagined. He had told her that they would fight together, and now it was time to prove it. They moved through the building, its walls lined with broken equipment and forgotten supplies. It was a place of old secrets, hidden away in the depths of the city. The alien woman's mind raced as she tried to piece together the pieces of the puzzle. Who were these people who were after her? What did they want? And why had they been tracking her for so long? They reached a small, dimly lit room at the back of the building. Inside, a table sat in the center, surrounded by monitors and strange, unfamiliar technology. The man stepped forward, his hand hovering over a panel on the wall, and the room suddenly came to life. The screens flickered, revealing images of people, faces she didn't recognize, and cryptic messages scrolling across the screen. "We've found them," the man said, his voice steady. "They're closer than we thought." The alien woman looked at the screens, her heart pounding. This was it. The people who had used her, who had torn apart her life, were right here. They had been searching for her, and now she had the chance to stop them. But was she ready? Was she ready to confront the darkness of her past and face the people who had once controlled her every move? "You don't have to do this alone," the man said again, his voice cutting through her thoughts. He stepped closer to her, his eyes filled with an unspoken promise. "I'm with you. We're in this together." The words felt like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of her fears. For so long, she had been alone, fighting to survive, to escape. But now, standing beside him, she realized that she didn't have to fight alone anymore. She wasn't just a tool. She was a person, someone with the power to choose her own future. With a deep breath, she nodded. "Let's finish this." The room hummed to life as the man began typing quickly on the console, inputting commands. The alien woman's eyes scanned the screens, the familiar, cold sensation of determination settling in her chest. She had been used, but she wasn't going to let herself be used anymore. She had a purpose now, and no one could take that away from her. Suddenly, the door to the room slammed open, and figures stepped inside, their dark silhouettes blocking the light. The alien woman's heart skipped a beat. It was them, the people who had tracked her, the ones who had once called her nothing more than an experiment. They had found her, but this time things were different. This time she was in control. "You don't have to do this," the man said, stepping forward, his voice calm and authoritative. "You're not going to take her. She's not a weapon anymore." The figures didn't speak, but the tension in the air was palpable. They had come for her, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. The alien woman's mind raced as she looked at the people in front of her. They had tried to break her, to use her, but they hadn't succeeded. She was stronger now, more than they could ever understand. She stepped forward, standing beside the man, her body tense but determined. "I'm not your weapon," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "I'm not your tool anymore." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, with a sudden movement, The figures lunged toward them. The alien woman's instincts kicked in. She dodged quickly, her body moving with a fluidity she hadn't known she still possessed. The man was beside her, his movements just as quick and precise. Together, they fought as one. A perfect balance of strength and strategy. The alien woman's powers surged within her, a wave of energy that she had learned to control over time. She used it, not as a weapon, but as a shield, pushing back the figures who had once seen her as nothing more than an object. She could feel the weight of her past lifting, piece by piece, with every blow she struck. Every movement that brought her closer to the person she had always wanted to be. When the last of the figures fell, the room was silent once more, save for the sound of their heavy breathing. The alien woman stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was no fear, there was no regret. She had made her choice, and now she had taken control of her life. The man stood beside her, his face filled with pride. "You did it," he said softly. "You're free." The alien woman looked around the room, the screens now blank, the danger gone. It was over. The past had been confronted, and she had emerged victorious. But more than that, she had found something more valuable than freedom. She had found herself. She turned to the man, her eyes meeting his. "We did it," she said, her voice full of quiet strength. "And this is just the beginning." Together, they walked out of the building, leaving behind the shadows of her past. The future stretched out before them, full of endless possibilities. And for the first time in her life, the alien woman didn't feel like a weapon or a prisoner. She felt like a person with a future, a person who was truly free.